The first ever Chronicle Books panel. This is the very first one we've ever done, and I'm hoping it won't be our last, but there's no guarantees. So we're a very casual, friendly, funny company, and we don't script things, and we have a very conversational tone. So we won't be reading cards or preparing statements or anything like that. So we should have fun and just be friends.
Why did you guys come up on stage?
I've read the wrong card. There will be prepared statements in this presentation. So good luck making any sense out of what we're going to do. Great. So just to give you a little history. I'm sorry. Let me tell you about who's taking up. So immediately to my left, we have Michael McWilliam, True Blood. He's both on the show, and he's also the author of the current IDW True Blood comic book series. Yeah. And he's in Classifies too.
Yes. Classic American film. Classifies too. I think it's available on Criterion.
There's a great scene in a next to Michael is the Eisner Award-winning author and genius, really, behind Darth Vader and Son. And of course, Mr. Jeffrey Brown has done many other graphic novels, which I urge you to check out as well. They just weren't published by us. Jeffrey is, this is probably what your 10th panel.
6
is the 6, okay. So we're still ahead. Good, great. Next to Jeffrey, LA artist and comic genius, the astonishing Brandon Bird. Next to Brandon, the author best known for Sally Forth. He's the current author of the Sally Forth newspaper strip. He's the author of a couple of books for us, which we're going to talk about. Mr. Francesco Martuliano. After Francesco is the guy who sits next to me at work. He spells nerds with a U. And he's an awesome designer, Mr. Neil Egan. And then last but not least is Chronicle Books super editor Steve Marcus. Steve is smart and tough and is responsible for some of our biggest and most successful books. And his assistant recently shaved her head and dyed his double green. So that's a stressful job.
Don't read anything into that.
Or take from that what you will. Great.
And let's not forget creative force of nature and graphic designer Michael Morris.
So thank you. So, Chronicle Books, just to give you a background on us and why we're even here. We are a San Francisco-based publisher. We were founded in 1967 originally as a division of the Chronicle newspaper. At the time, Chronicle Books published collections of recipes, collections of things to do on the weekend, like Bay Area trips and things like that. And in somewhere in the 80s, I believe, we became independent and began publishing distinctive visual books. We do art, design, architecture, photography, food and drink, lifestyle, pop culture, which is what we're going to talk about today. And we have a huge children's list as well, so we have a lot for everyone in booth 1506. Early Chronicle really shows our character. Two of the favorite books that I think I've ever seen from my early days. Literally, the book is about hot tubbing. Campbell Soup it's pictures of people in hot tubs. There's nothing more to it. They're on the telephone, they're smiling, they're laughing.
You were so far ahead of your time, though, in Hot Tub Time Machine.
It's extremely quirky, but it's one of our favorite books, and one copy remains, and none of us have access to it anymore because we love it so much that people destroy it.
Are those going to be reissued?
I would love to reissue that, but I don't think they're not. Cutting up in the kitchen is just, I love the cover. Inside, there's all kinds of things you can do with meat, like shape it into a cactus, or if you're serving a Southwestern meal, it's really strange. But what I'm basically getting at is we have this history of quirky and odd publishing, and we really embrace their sense of humor. We've also moved into some really big territory, and we published the Beatles anthology in 2000, which is probably our biggest book ever in the company history, I believe. We also published Farts, a Spottish guy, so perhaps you've seen those.
Not to your own.
Redhead in front, keep to yourself. At Chronicle, we like movies. We like TV, we like movies, we like comics, we like everything. And we talk about it as much as anybody else here does, and we compare the things that we love. And we are lucky in that we live in the Bay Area and we have access to Pixar, which is 15 minutes away, depending on traffic, and Lucasfilm, which is just across the city. So as an example of some of the stuff that we've done with Disney and Pixar, I would ask you to close your eyes and imagine. Imagine the art of Tangled, a recent Disney film, or perhaps the art of Cars, which is another Pixar book. Every Pixar book and most Disney animated features in the last few years we have done books on. And down to 15 or 16, you can see some examples since I forgot to bring those. There. Our most recent Disney and Pixar, Monsters University, which obviously just came out, beautiful book, and Wreck-It Ralph, which came out last year. Art of Frozen is our next big Disney release, but we did not have clearance to show that to you. So Wreck-It Ralph is really beautiful, and we should all enjoy that instead. So we're not, watching movies, we're watching TV. We love HBO as much as anybody else does. We talked about the developments on the show on Monday, whether it's Game of Thrones or True Blood. We love it, and we've done books with the first 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. We've got another book coming out next year, which we'll cover in the next 2. We've done 2 True Blood cookbooks, because of course, you could do a cookbook without True Blood. And Treme, which is a cookbook that's coming out at the end of this month, which focuses on Louisiana cooking. And which brings us really to our first title, and our first panelist. Just check on my unscripted notes here really quickly. So the concept for this book is about Steve Newland, played by Mr. McWilliam, before he was turned. So before he was turned, the Reverend was keeping notes, and some of them correct and some of them incorrect, about the nature of vampires and the nature of supernatural beings. So imagine that part, and then at some point, Pam and Eric get their hand on the book, and Pam and Eric make changes, and they make notes, and they make lots of snarky comments. And all of that co-written by Michael. The question I have for Michael, so I'm going to show you some slides while we talk.
Okay. I also want to just give a shout out to Gianna Sobol, who I co-wrote the book with, who couldn't be here today.
And she also co-wrote, or completely wrote the other 2 books.
Can you bring your mic closer? Your mic? Yeah.
And she was a story editor for the True Blood comic books and associate producer on the show. So she has a really close relationship with True Blood, and I've been working with her for a couple of years.
So Michael, when you're writing for this book in particular, what is different about writing this way than writing for your comic series about the same characters?
Well, obviously one's a comic book and that's sort of scripted, and you're writing many different characters' point of views, and you're writing for the artwork. And with this book, what we try to do is we really wanted to create an artifact from the show, and I'm actually writing from Steve Newland's point of view. So it's really like a whole other kind of animal in terms of creating a book. And so I think it's really fun, and then of course we jump in and we write from Pam and Eric's point of view as well. But the goal here is really creating an artifact that exists within the continuity of the show itself.
And when I was working on the book, I really found it interesting, and Steve is a very funny character, and when he's writing, it's very clueless in many ways. And how is it different? Pam is so specifically funny, and writing there are different types of humor. I just wonder if you have any thoughts about that. Like, Pam is so different from Steve.
Well, I think Pam is more intentionally funny. You know, she's definitely sarcastic, and you know, writing Steve comes a bit more naturally just because I've been playing the part for so many years now. But also, Kristen Bauer being starting to replace Pam, her voice is so distinct on the show, and the writers do such a good job of nailing her character that I think, you know, that's a part that I always wanted to play too on the show. You know, I think if I could play any other part, I would play Pam. So, you know, it's just it's such a fun role, and it's so clear why it's such a fan favorite character. So it was really kind of easy to jump into, you know. But in terms of keeping those two voices distinct, I think that I can really thank the writers on the show for setting that up for us.
This is one of my favorite thing working on this book with these guys was that they really wanted it to be an artifact and to look genuine. And their feedback was always, we would make it messier. And I really loved that. But it took a heck of a long time.
Yeah,
but, it was, thank you. But it was so much fun to be creating something that they were like, let's just make it what it is. Like, no pretense.
And the other fun thing about it that I don't think you see in the preview is that I also do some sketches and doodles in the book from Steve's hand. And that kind of came out of the idea last year when we were shooting season 5. There was a moment in The Authority where all of us were sitting around the conference table. And we had to do some business while we were waiting for Salome to walk in. And I was sitting with Dennis O'Hara, who plays Russell Edgington, and I was just sitting drawing him, and I decided then and there that maybe Steve had a little bit of an artistic side to him, or wanted to be. The drawings aren't necessarily great, but I think that they capture his point of view really well, and they're a bit funny. So I only had to be as good of an artist as Steve is, but my favorite thing that you can't see is that he also has some Jason Stackhouse fan art in there. That's the thing I'm most looking forward to getting out there. Not anything in the book.
Exactly. Like, your art is so great and so perfect because I really believe that you are Steve in many ways. And it's hard because we talk about Steve and we mean Michael.
Yeah.
The editor and I are saying Steve, but we're talking about Michael.
Yeah, it's, you know, because the book is written by Steve Newland essentially, so it's kind of hard to, especially, you know, where to draw the line. But and the doodles are also most of them are very violent. That sort of represents the undercurrent of Steve's.
That's right between a 13-year-old girl and an ass murderer. Great. Awesome. When we're not, it's a transition. When we're not watching HBO, we're probably watching movies. And who doesn't like to watch Star Wars? Yeah. So Chronicle Books obviously loves Star Wars. We've been publishing Star Wars forever. And these are just some recent titles that we've come out with. And we go back far and deep. If you're ever interested in really seeing the history of publishing, check our website. But one of my most beloved Star Wars titles that we've worked on, and everyone else's as well, is Darth Vader and Son, which, if I haven't mentioned, Mr. Jeffrey Brown and I signed for the other night. And the follow-up to that book was Vader's Little Princess, which came out a month or two, maybe longer ago. And also ended up, both books spent considerable time in the New York Times bestseller list. And Vader's Little Princess is still climbing up to that pretty much every week. So, kind of genius work. With these books, Jeff, here comes your question. Giving an example from one of your sketches, would you talk about what it was like working with Lucasfilm, specifically with the question about you're creating a narrative for characters that exist, and you're creating a totally new narrative that some people might not jive to because it's out of continuity. What do you feel about your different take, or what was it like giving a different take on your relationship?
Well, I think from the beginning, Lucasfilm was really on the same page with the idea, and they understood that, you know, it's not canon, not continuity, and the humor comes from taking these characters out of their normal situations and just tweaking them a bit. So, like with this instance, ID88, instead of being hired by Darth Vader to track down Luke, he's babysitting Luke and Leia, but of course no disintegrations. And yeah, so my initial idea was I just wanted to draw IG-88, and so I was like, what can I come up with for IG-88? And I just had a Vader having him deliver flowers for Leia or something. And my editor, J.W. Rinsler, at Lucasfilm suggested, having IG-88 chaperone Han and Leia on a date. And there's quite a few Han and Leia dating jokes, so then I was like, no, IG-88 should be the babysitter. And, he's like, just the idea of IG-88 trying to get kids to go to bed. It's really fun.
And actually, I've never really talked about it, but when you were doing these cartoons in the roughs, which I love as much as the finished book, actually, we love getting the sketches in. Were you ever like watching the movie and saying, oh my goodness, there's something here that would work?
Yeah, I mean, I usually work with some kind of background noise, whether it's music or TV or film, and if it's TV or film, it has to usually be something I'm somewhat familiar with. So it doesn't distract me too much. And so Star Wars is kind of perfect because I know it so well, but so I could just have it, I just basically was watching the movies on a loop the whole time I was working. And then occasionally I'd have to pause in the middle and switch to a different film for reference or, and just letting it spark ideas as I went along.
Sort of soaking in Star Wars,
Pretty much, yeah. Then I take a break from watching until the next book.
I was thinking about this morning, and I know it's kind of hard to see on the contrast, but do you remember how many conversations we had about the flavor of ice cream that David, or that Darth Vader?
Yes,
Yes.
Lucasfilm wanted to have the ice cream flavor be red, well pink, because that's the color of the Sith, of course. But Jeff, your dad preferred mint chip, right?
Yeah. Mint chocolate chip was my dad's ice cream. And then they went along with that. They realized, we've got the red title, and so having the red ice cream going right next to the red title, it made sense. And it's more meaningful for blue movies, the ice cream.
The little details that we have to get into with things like that. It's all pleasure. Okay, so, like Jeff, we sometimes have to turn off the TV to get something done and find inspiration in other things, in theater or in other books, or just in what's going on around us, like Jeff finds it in his children, obviously. So a lot of what we do when we're presenting books or publishing books is looking for what's out there in pop culture, which we all do so well, obviously. That's why we're here. And the books we're going to look at now are sort of shifting our focus towards our pop culture stuff. And believe it or not, Jeff is the first in our pop culture sort of upcoming books that I want to talk about. Jeff has this history with this of cat publishing. So before his mega award-winning Darth Vader sandwich won the Eisner last night, if I haven't mentioned, not last night, on Friday night, he published Cat Getting Out of the Bag and Cats Over Here, which are both great books about observing cats. And they are wonderful little slices of his older library and a precursor to Kids Are Weird, which is a book that Jeff has coming up from us, I think it's fall of next year. I hope that you guys see. Please.
So, yeah, it's just basically funny things that my son said. And so we were eating ice cream, and he got Superman ice cream, and he's eating it, and these kids walked in, and they're like, what ice cream is that? Superman. What does it taste like? And just, totally close. Human clothes.
Kids can write his own books, I think, quite a bit at some point. Or he should. For books like this, what's the difference between like a galactic family and terrestrial father and son?
I mean, the aliens and spaceships.
Yeah. That's what I was looking for. Great, thank you. I another of our authors who uses things that are going on in the world around him and entertainment around him to talk about or to create work is Mr. Brandon Burr. I originally came across Brandon years ago after hearing Jordan Jesse Go, I think, and you were on with them and you were talking about your Cape by Number kits, and they were like a sales pitch. I was working on a Cape by Number kit myself at that point, and looked you up and sent away for it. It came back and it was ridiculously hard. It's so difficult, but it was hilarious. Exactly. Didn't get that until I got it. So funny. There's hundreds of colors. And there were like 8 paints, I think, or 10 paints.
Oh yeah, 5.
Yeah, 5. Crazy ridiculous. And we knew that this is somebody that we wanted to do something with at some point because his sense of humor is so sharp. For Brandon, there's one particular piece in this activity book, shall we say, that I have a question about. Maybe specifically, maybe not, maybe generally, but you get your inspiration for pieces of work like this.
Well, like, the idea for the book is, like, it's my art, but sort of in the form of like a 70s or 80s coloring activity book. So, for like the new stuff, it was like a simplest page piece. It was like, kind of, I looked through just tons of old coloring books, and coloring books are kind of stupid. So. And it was like finding like, oh, complete the picture, or things where it'd be like, connect the dots to find out what it is, but like most of the picture is already there. So it's kind of like finding ways to show how silly the format was, but also throw in something that makes it like even sillier. And you can't get sillier.
Plus, you get a check to redo his hairstyle.
Yes, yeah.
Personally.
And like, the idea is that it's not just an art book that you can look at, it's an art book that you can do art in, and like kind of have fun with, and not just be like, oh, it's set on the coffee table and forget about it.
And it is longer Valentine's.
Yes, and stickers, postcards.
Stickers, great books. So please check that one out because it's inexpensive, it's a great gift, and it's hilarious on every page in weird ways that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, what I really love about this book is that it's not just, oh, that's a famous person that I recognize, isn't that funny? There's a twist or an unexpected part of it that really like takes you out of this cheap commercial kind of world of,
Yeah, like my favorite reaction to art is always like, what the heck is going on there?
Right. It's brilliantly subversive in its like simplicity. I saw someone drew his face again on top of his face as his face yesterday, and his art was amazing. It blew my mind.
I think we still have Christopher Walken masks, Brandon.
No, we ran out.
No, we don't. Sorry about that. But you can get your own. And you can get your own copy of the book. When we're not watching TV, movies, or working 14-hour days, or locked in a conference room,